here shortly. Apparently there was an accident that's causing some delays on people getting into the Capitol this morning. So I apologize. She will be here shortly. We are going to have a hearing on HB 2536. I will open that hearing and we will start with a bill overview by our reviser, Jenna Moyer.
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. House Bill 2536 establishes the sole family legal permanency option for children 16 years of age or older. And because it's an acronym, the SOLE stands for Support, Opportunity, Unity, Legal Relationship. And this bill would establish this option as a permanency option for children in custody of the Secretary of Children and Families. A court can order sole family legal permanency for a child if that child is 16 years of age or older. And the bill also amends existing statutes to integrate this option into the Child in Need of Care codes. Or Child in Need of Care Code, excuse me. Section 1 allows for the appointment of a sole family legal permanency for a child who is 16 years of age if the child agrees and approves of the appointment and the parent consents unless those parental rights have been terminated and the court orders the sole family legal permanency. The court may order such permanency for the child when the court finds either a finding of unfitness or terminates the parental rights or determines that it is in the best interests of the child and the requirements for such appointment are met. And before submitting a proposed sole family legal permanency custodian for appointment, the Secretary is required to observe the child in the home of the proposed sole family legal permanency custodian, determine if that custodian has been convicted of certain crimes, consider appointment of a relative or another individual with whom the child has close emotional ties, and submit a report of these completed items to the court. Before the court orders the sole family legal permanency, the court shall review the report submitted by the Secretary and other financial information. The court shall ensure that the child has maximum benefits available to such child. And in subsection F, when the court appoints a sole family legal permanency custodian, the court shall consider appointing a relative or a person with whom the child has close emotional ties. And once the court appoints a sole family legal permanency custodian, the jurisdiction of the Secretary of Children and Families would terminate. That appointed custodian shall exercise the rights and responsibilities of a parent, except that custodian cannot consent to the adoption of the child and is not subject to court-ordered child support. If that legal permanency is ordered but parental rights are not terminated, the parents of the child would retain rights to consent to adoption, could be subject to child support, and would retain the rights of inheritance. And the rights of inheritance, this is existing law for a child, are maintained regardless of whether a child is adopted or not adopted. The court may impose additional limitations on the custodian. If the court determines it's in the best interest of the child, the custodian could share some responsibilities with the parents of the child. The court may appoint more than one sole family legal permanency custodian and designate one as the primary custodian. And subsection H provides for dispute resolution between the custodian and the child, and in cases of the divorce of two married persons appointed as custodians after the appointment, the court would decide custody. And the remainder of the sections are sort of making the existing Child in Need of Care Code work with the changes made by section 1. Section 2 amends the definition section of the revised Kansas Code for Care of Children, which would be 382202. It would define sole family legal permanency, and you may notice there are some changes that are not exactly related to sole family permanency, and those are reconciling changes that you all made in law last year related to the addition of a behavioral health crisis. So when you pass two bills that amend the same section of law, if they're at all different, we have to reconcile them at the next chance, and this is the chance to do that. Section 3 adds a new section of law establishing sole family legal permanency to the list of statutes that are subject to the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act, and allows a court to exercise jurisdiction over a child with this permanency option until the child is 18, or if the child is in high school, until June 1st of the school year during which the child reaches 18. Section 4 amends the contents of a petition filed for action under the revised Kansas Code for Care of Children. The petition is required to include a statement that if a parent does not appear in court, the court can make decisions without their input, including the removal of a child, payment of child support, termination of parental rights, and appointment of a permanent custodian or a sole family legal permanency custodian. In Section 5, if custody has been awarded to someone other than a parent, a permanency plan is required and provided at the dispositional hearing, during which the court determines whether reintegration with a child is viable, and if not, what would a viable alternative be. This section would include sole family legal permanency as a viable alternative to reintegration. In proceedings where reintegration is not a viable alternative, the court shall initiate an adoption or appointment of a permanent custodian or a sole family legal permanency custodian, unless the court has compelling reasons why it's not in the best interests of the child. If the court doesn't document those reasons, the county or district attorney shall make a motion to appoint a permanent custodian or a sole family legal permanency custodian. In Section 6, when a child is in out-of-home placement, the permanency plan should include a plan for reintegration, or if reintegration is not a viable alternative, a statement for that basis, and a plan for permanency that includes either adoption, a permanent custodian, a sole family legal permanency, or another permanent living arrangement when those are not in the child's best interests. In Section 7, the court shall hold hearings to consider progress towards the accomplishment of a permanency plan. At these hearings, the court shall determine whether the child would be integrated with the child's parents, placed for adoption, or with a permanent custodian or a sole family legal permanency custodian. Permanency hearings shall continue until that adoption or appointment of a custodian or sole family legal permanency custodian. If the court does not determine that reasonable efforts are being made, the court may rescind the previous orders and make other orders that the court finds appropriate. And Section 8 currently allows an interested party to file a motion for the court to determine unfitness of a parent or terminate parental rights and ask that the permanent custodian or a sole family legal permanency custodian be appointed. In Section 9, before a hearing to terminate parental rights, if a permanency plan includes adoption or the appointment of a permanent custodian or sole family permanency custodian, a parent may consent to that permanency plan. Upon an appointment by the court, the individual appointed may consent to that appointment and will have all the rights and responsibilities of a permanent custodian, and the child's parents shall execute that consent to the appointment in writing. And this passed the House by a vote of 112 to 8. And it was amended in committee, and it's just one small change on page 11, line 40. It changes the words has been to as, and that is more of a technical change to fix the lead-in language. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you for the brief. We appreciate it very much. Committee, any questions for Jenna? Well done. Seeing none. Committee, thank you for your patience with me. Some of us coming in from the east side ran into, in the South Lawrence Trafficway, terrible accident that pushed everybody back and had to end up taking a reroute. So we're going to begin with 2536, which the first proponent, which is Rachel March. And because, as you can see on the agenda, I think we have 10 people that are speaking as proponents. We'd love to hear from all of you. Let's say about 2.5 minutes, you will be time. Thank you, Rachel, and please come ahead.
Good morning, Chair Gossage, Vice Chair Erickson, and Ranking Member Petty, and members of the committee. Thank you so much for holding this hearing on HB 2536. My name is Rachel Marsh. I'm with the Children's Alliance of Kansas, and who the Children's Alliance is a group of experts across the state who work in child welfare, who come together to make systems improvements in the child welfare system. And in that role, we were invited a couple of years ago to join the young adults sitting behind you as they began to think through how to improve the lives of young people who are aging out of foster care or looking at becoming adults who are currently in the foster care system. And in keeping with your 2.5 minute suggestion, I do want to make sure that I stand out of the way and allow the young adults behind me to share their stories about their experience in foster care and why they believe the sole permanency option is necessary. What I can offer is that my background being a child in need of care attorney in Kansas and someone who's been working in this system for more years that I've now lost track, is that at the end of this hearing, if you do have questions about some of the technical pieces that your revisor just explained, I'm happy to come up and answer questions about how practically this might work. The main thing to understand is that when our young people are 16 years old or older and they're looking at 18 and looking out of aging out of foster care, we need to do more than just make sure they know how to boil an egg and to find their birth certificate. We need to make sure they have family, because all of us understand the importance of family in our lives. And when we grow older, we develop our own families. But unfortunately, our traditional understanding of that can be limited, because we all, if we didn't enter foster care, we might not have had that. So in my personal life, I have a sister who's not my sister, and another sister who's not my sister, and a sister of my mom who is also not her sister. If my children ever needed to enter foster care, all these three people would be happy to stand around and become their sole permanent family, because they come around my kids for graduation and for Easter and for holidays as family. But our current law wouldn't permit that, and we want to change that so we can recognize the unique situation of our young people who are aging out of foster care, provide them family. So I'm happy to stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And for those of you that are new to committee, thank you so much for being here. So we have the time, and the reason that we have the timer is so that we have plenty of time for the committee to ask questions. So we will take all questions at the end and not in between. And also, you will see us looking at our computers. That's because it's a paperless committee, and all of your testimonies are before us on our computer. So next, we will go to Alexandria Ware.
Good morning, Chair Gossage, Vice Chair Erickson, and Ranking Minority Member Petty. My name is Alexandria Ware. I'm the CEO of Culture Creations, and so I work with youth who are aging out of care, and I'm also a current foster parent, and I have lived experience in the child welfare system. So I understand the need for soul family. I'm at a very different level than most would think, right? I grew up in this system, but I family. So as I explained in the House and during the Joint Committee meeting, I had a grandpa, and my papa was my soul family. I had a foster family who took me in and took care of me, but my grandpa was like, that was my A1 since day one, right? And we really got to just bond, and he gave me so many things besides just, like Rachel explained, the life skills, knowing how to do all this stuff. He gave me love. And that's what soul family is. Soul family allows you to have young people have love in their life, and we can't legislate love, right? There's no law that says you have to love someone, but we can legislate connections and legislate those connections for young people aging out of care to make sure they have those families, to make sure, you know, when we're looking back and we're looking at our stats and our outcomes of this system that we have created as a society, our young people are actually being able to have someone to go home to for Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, right? They can go to college and have all those things, and they don't have to go through some of the things my colleagues and I had to go through, from bouncing placement to placement or ending up in juvenile detention or any of those things. They have parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, people in their lives, whether they're blood or not, who care about them. So I urge you guys to pass this bill because it's needed, and it was made for youth by youth. So everyone who came up with this at the national level and in Kansas have all been in the foster care system, whether it's parents, kinship parents, foster parents, and young people impacted by the system. Thank you.
Next, we have Kristen Powell. Kristen, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, please proceed. And I don't know if you heard, you have 2.5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Gossage and members of the Senate Committee. My name is Kristen Nicole Powell, and I'm a legal and policy co-chair for the Kansas Soul Family Implementation Team. And I'm here today to speak in support of House Bill 2536. It's common for youth who enter into the foster care system to feel isolated, especially if they're entering into care because of trauma or violence. I personally did not like living with my dad because of a lot of reasons, and at 12 years old, I began running away, and that was my coping skill. A month after my 13th birthday, I ran away from the Wichita Children's Home, and while I was there, I met a girl who was about to turn 18. She told me that if I ever wanted to run again, I could just come to her house, and she gave me her address on a piece of paper, and I kept it. And shortly after meeting up with her, I ended up being trafficked. When I was later found by the police, My experience was not very good. I was interrogated, I was incarcerated, and then I was placed into foster care. From there, it was a long journey to becoming 18, and I was labeled high risk, which meant that essentially I wasn't allowed any contact with the outside world except for going to school and having supervised phone calls with my mom. I wasn't allowed to have a social media or a phone, and I felt cut off from my community and everybody that I knew. Because I kept running away, my judge placed a no run order on me, which meant that if I kept running, I would have to spend 6 months incarcerated, which I did keep running. I felt trapped and isolated, and a few months after I turned 16, my foster case was closed and I was placed solely in the juvenile justice system. 49% of young people who navigate the Kansas foster care system experience incarceration. The data in Kansas shows that youth who leave the foster care system are not finding positive outcomes. And instead of environments where young people can flourish within permanent loving families, we are witnessing the rise of temporary solutions like day centers for unplaced foster youth. It is essential for young people to have adults in their lives so they have someone that they can call when they need help or when they just need to talk. I know this from my own experiences with positive relationships with adults in my life who loved me and cared for me even when I didn't know how to love or care for myself. This kept me from experiencing things like prison, homelessness, drug addiction, and even death. 60% of youth who age out of the foster care system age out with legally recognized relationships or support.
Kristen, I'm so sorry. Your 2.5 minutes is up. Do you want to give us one final sentence?
Yes, I'm asking you today to support HB 2536. This is an opportunity for Kansas to be the first state in the country to do something different for foster youth. And if anyone disagrees with the bill, I ask you to think why we shouldn't, but why we should pass HB 2536. Thank you.
And Nakia, please correct me.
Kaya.
Nakaya.
Gotcha. Yes, ma'am. Well, good evening, Chairwoman Gossage and the ranking members of the community. I mean, not the community, committee, excuse me. My name is Nakaya Gatson, and I'm honored to be here with you all and serve as one of the legal and policy tri-chairs for the sole implementation team. I extend my heartfelt gratitude for the opportunity to address you all today regarding the sole legal permanency option. Additionally, I approach this space not only as a professional, but also with a deep understanding of the lived experience within the child welfare system. Foster care is not one size fit all. Many young people enter the system for different reasons, often stemming from either state intervention or their parents relinquishing their rights due to unfortunate circumstances. And this is precisely why we do need the sole family legal permanency option, a pathway that can be uniquely tailored to everyone's circumstances. And it also opens the door to a vision beyond conventional norms dictated by the current laws and policies within the child welfare system. Reflecting on my own journey, I entered the system at an age where I was on the verge of aging out of care and both of my parents passed away. And so I did have limited support, and I also was duly impacted and landed in a juvenile correctional facility as well. I could have greatly benefited from kinship care as I transitioned out of the correctional facility at the age of 16. But it seemed like I was in a state of a transition, a circle of transition. And so that seemed to never end. And so every young person deserves a chance to experience normalcy, right? An opportunity to thrive. And so it's crucial to actively engage young people in this decision process on where they feel like they belong to. The child welfare system is a complex system again, and we can't really generalize the needs of every child and youth within the system. And so in conclusion, I really just hope that today I leave you all with the understanding that I view sole family as a necessary option, and one that has the potential to enhance the well-being of young adults in the Kansas foster care system.
Perfectly timed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, we have Marquand. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Gushits and Vice Chair Erickson and other committee members. My name is Marquand Teets, and I am speaking in support of House Bill 2536, the sole family legal permanency option. During my time in foster care, my great aunt graciously took care of me and my brother for a period. Unfortunately, at 16, I was forced to sign out of kinship care to avoid re-entering the system, resulting in the painful separation from my brother, who remained in the Kansas foster care, and resulted in homelessness in my adulthood. This decision to emancipate was driven by a desire to forge my own path, despite the challenges that lay ahead. Had Soul Family been available, it could have been a crucial support system for my aunt and me. The program's emphasis on supporting kinship care could have allowed us to remain together, offering the necessary resources and guidance to navigate our unique situation, instead of facing the daunting prospect of going at it alone. The present Soul Family support would have empowered us to overcome obstacles and make informed decisions about our future. As you consider legislative measures to enhance the foster care system in Kansas, I urge you to explore and champion initiatives like Soul Family that prioritize family, unity, and support. My personal journey underscores the potential positive impact such programs can have on the lives of those navigating the foster care system, especially young people like myself who did not have the opportunity to benefit from such support. It is disheartening to note that a significant percentage, approximately 60% of youth age out of foster care without any form of assistance, leaving them isolated without essential benefits and support. Soul Family serves as a beacon of hope in addressing this critical gap by providing a structured and supportive framework. It offers a lifeline of young people in foster care, creating a sense of belonging and connection that is often lacking in their journey. The program's emphasis on fostering relationships within existing family structures, such as kinship care, is especially significant in promoting stability and a sense of security for these youth. As you deliberate on legislative measures to enhance the foster care system in Kansas, I encourage you to recognize the transformative potential of Soul Family by making this permanency option available. We have the opportunity to empower young individuals in foster care, ensuring they receive the necessary support and guidance to navigate the challenges they face, thereby improving their chance for successful transition into adulthood. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Cassie McDowell.
Good morning, it's Casey. Casey, yes. Good morning, Chair Gossage and members of the committee. I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today for the proponent testimony on House Bill 2536. My name is Casey McDowell, and I'm a person with lived experience and a tri-chair of the Soul Family Practice and Implementation Team, as well as a parent advocate with Kansas Family Advisory Network. I am here to speak on House Bill 2536, the Soul Family Legal Permanency Option. I'm honored to be here speaking with you today as I can extend my heartfelt gratitude to be the person with lived experience here speaking with you. As most of you know, young people that enter the foster care system for all kinds of reasons. Statistics show that 62% of kids emancipate out of the system and only 36 will actually find legal permanency. 24% will be homeless at least once, and 1 in 5 will be homeless at the age of 18. Young adults are more likely to be arrested, serve jail time, and become addicted to drugs. I am here as one of them peers, reflecting on my journey as I go through this child welfare system, both as a youth and as a parent. Sometimes was not easy, and a lot of times I felt trapped and thinking I was never going to accomplish anything. Young people who are currently in the system also may feel trapped as they have no voice in what happens to them. And if this bill was passed, 2536, the Soul Family Permanency Option, it would give the youth a different permanency option and a voice for them to be heard of where they want to be placed, which may be a better chance for success for them in the future. A lot of young people have went through trauma and have never felt a sense of belonging. If House Bill 3526 was passed, it would give them an opportunity to feel a sense of belonging with the forever family / community. It was amazing sitting here today talking with you to listen to all of our testimonies of how far we've came. Allowing this bill to pass would be absolutely amazing for the young people. I appreciate you taking the time today to listen, and hopefully you're able to open up your hearts and minds to be able to make this a legal permanency option for the kids here in Kansas. Thank you so much for your time today. Have a blessed day.
Well timed, Casey. And next we have Adina.
Good morning, Chair Gossage and Committee. My name is Adina Morse, and I'm here today to speak in support of House Bill 2536, the sole family legal permanency option. As a mom, attorney, and adopted child, in order of importance, I see the need for this type of permanency option in our state. As a family law attorney, I've worked with families in both custody and parenting time cases, and in guardianships and conservatorships under the probate code. I understand that sole is a legal permanency option in the SYNC code, but there are strong parallels. In working as an attorney, I witnessed firsthand how family, biological and chosen, came together to support each other and the children when life got difficult. The sole family concept is not unlike co-guardianship and standby guardians. As an adopted child, I know the pain of losing my biological family. The sole family permanency option can help ensure that fewer children experience this pain. And as a mom of 2 children, ages 17 and 21, I witness daily how much my children need my guidance and support as they navigate young adulthood. The sole family legal permanency option delivers a trifecta to Kansas children in foster care. 1, the support of family, biological and chosen. 2, a sense of belonging and security that family brings. And 3, the guidance and support that all young adults need as they navigate from childhood to adulthood. I also think it's really amazing that young people created this program, and it was designed and developed by them based on their experiences and what they need. Passage of this legislation is an incredible opportunity for this body to truly support the young people in Kansas the way they're telling us they need to be supported. I wholeheartedly support passage of the sole family legal permanency option and urge you to do the same. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next we have Crystal Hedrick.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Crystal Hedrick. I'm the Vice President of Kansas Programs with Foster Adopt Connect. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 2536. It's really been a privilege to share a space with the folks you've already heard from today. Over my career, I've really developed an understanding of how complex policy in relationship to child welfare can be, because it really needs to guide us towards best practice, but not dictate our practice. In state fiscal year 23, 455 young adults left foster care with the case plan goal of independent living. 90% of these young people told us that they had at least one positive adult in their life. SOL is an opportunity for these kids and these positive adults to experience legal permanency in a way that makes sense for them. We've been doing the best that we can for a long time now in Kansas, but thanks to these folks behind me and those that you've heard from today in person and virtually, we now know better. Since we know better, it's time to do better. I would appreciate your support in passing HB 2536, the sole family legal permanency option. Happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. And then we have Mike Fonkert.
Good morning, Chair Gossage, members of the committees. My name is Mike Fonkert. I am the Deputy Director with Kansas Appleseed Center for Law and Justice and here to support House Bill 2536 today. I'd like to start by just acknowledging the years of work that's gone into this by young people with lived experience and recognize the broad coalition of folks that support this legislation. It's a rare opportunity that so many of us are working in tandem. Oftentimes there are disagreements on what's best for the foster care system, and it's wonderful to work on something where there's so much broad agreement. I wanted to spend my limited time here just focusing on some of the data points, which you can see in my testimony. The impact of this legislation would be significant for older youth in foster care. Highlighting the desired outcomes of sole family legal permanency is increasing the number of young people who maintain close and healthy relationships with siblings and birth family members during and after foster care, expanding permanence options for young people whose needs are not met by adoption, reunification, and legal guardianship, including young people who are parenting, reducing the length of stay for older youth in foster care by increasing their options for establishing permanent families, and reducing the number of young people living in group settings or institutions. In terms of impact, many Kansas youth 16 and older in foster care are currently left with no options as they reach adulthood. In 2023, there were about 2,000. Over 30% of all children in foster care were 14 and older. Of children 16 and older in Kansas foster care, more than 50% will age out of the system, meaning they're going to enter adulthood without a permanent or legal family. In 2023, about 600 children in foster care, about 10% of all the children in foster care, had permanency goals leading to either emancipation or aging out. So the impact of this would be significant. And when we look at, kind of second level impacts, in 2022, 24% of youth age 19 exiting the foster care system in Kansas did not have a high school diploma or other degree. In 2022, 29% of youth age 19 exiting foster care had experienced homelessness, and 28% of youth age 19 exiting foster care reported being recently incarcerated. So the impact of this legislation would be significant, and I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And finally, we have Gabriella.
Good morning, Chair Gossage and members of the Senate Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide proponent testimony in support of House Bill 2536, the sole family legal permanency option. My name is Gabriella Pagani, and I am here as one of the practice and implementation tri-chairs for Kansas Sole Family Implementation Team, an engaged Douglas County Coalition member, and a Kansas Family First Family Council representative. I also stand before you with experience as both a child in care as well as a mother who successfully reintegrated with her son through the foster care system. At 15 years old, I entered the foster care system exhausted by mentally, emotionally, sexual abuse that culminated in my mother calling CPS to remove me from her home. I've been without a father since age 5 when suicidal thoughts had overcome him and ended his life, the worst outcome imaginable. Thankfully, he left me with the best grandparents I could have ever asked for. But even with grandparents' rights, a lot of court dates, legal fees, they could only achieve bi-weekly visitations with me. And during the long wait for those weekends, I suffered immensely without a sense of direction or connection. The sole family legal permanency option would have let me keep what family I had left without burdening them with the financial responsibilities of caring for me. Instead, my family turned away from me, and they did not want to be associated with the system. They didn't want to be tasked with things like inflexible licensing training and mandatory background checks. SOL would have allowed me to be more engaged in my community, maintain lifelong friends, and stayed enrolled in educational programming. I would have had a chance to experience normal teen life and do things such as going to prom or graduating with my classmates. My experience in foster care was incredibly isolating, and now I only have a relationship with my father's parents. Bridges were burned through foster care, and then it was my grandma and I versus the world. 60% of youth emancipate or age out of the Kansas foster care system without legally recognized adults or permanent families. SOL allows youth to take back the control that was taken from them when they entered foster care. I wanted control so badly that I was willing to do anything for it. I was processing trauma and grieving my childhood, and when you're in foster care, you have to accept that a lot of experiences that most teenagers have will be taken from you. Part of developing as an adolescent is growing into an individual and planning for the future. So I just ask that you guys accept this bill and help make a change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the conferees. Committee, are there questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my question is for Mike. Thanks for being here. I just need some clarification about the fiscal information. So it looks like in 2025 that increases from, it was 714,000 to, over 2 million. And can you, and that would be, continue over 2 million. Can you explain that?
Well, I think that question might be better directed to, maybe Rachel might have some better insights to that. But my understanding is that we're going to have an increase to start, but we do anticipate those costs to decrease over time. Does any other conferees want to step up?
Rachel?
Thank you, Chair and Senator Petty. Yes, the fiscal note for this bill, and I didn't bring it up, but I have some my annotated bill, is a little bit unusual because it looks at 3 years worth of costs. And so it's important to note that the bottom line figure is over 3 years. And so annualized for the first couple of years, we're looking at approximately somewhere under 2.5 million. And the reason for that is that at this time, the feds wouldn't recognize our permanency until we fill out all the paperwork to make sure they do recognize our permanency that as you pass it. So these are sort of transitional costs that wouldn't be ongoing costs forever. And we would anticipate that once we're able to update our state plans on all the different benefits that we get from the government, that the federal portion of that fiscal note will increase over time. Does that answer?
That's helpful. And so does the SOL program help to extend the benefits or just maintain them for this, for the same period of time that the youth would been in foster care?
Sure, very good question. And I will tell you that the benefits part of this was one of the deeper dives I've ever had to take, and it is Byzantine when you look at the different sources of supports for youth who are in foster care and then after foster care. What the fiscal note is based on is equalizing the supports and services that a child could receive so that SOL is not an unresponsible decision. If a child ages out, they get a bunch of federal benefits right now. So they don't choose to leave foster care because we haven't provided those services before they're 18. I don't think I was very clear on that. The youth today really have to choose to age out of foster care without family in order to see the benefits. And we want to make sure that if they choose their family, they don't lose the benefits that they would otherwise receive.
So it's a continuation. If they choose to have the SOL family, they wouldn't be losing those then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make a quick comment that thank you for the youth who've shared very vulnerable stories and for being here. And also, I was just very impressed that the youth or young adults impacted were the ones that were getting to help create this. So I think often we make decisions for those younger than us or older than us, but to include those voices is really neat to see. Thank you.
Senator Steffen.
Thank you. Rachel, you handled the last one really well, so I'll impose upon you. Feel free to lateral it.
I'll try.
Help me understand the process. It's just, to me, to some degree, it sounds like we're trying to help these individuals have mentors.
Exactly.
Family and mentors.
I don't think I need to clarify. You're tracking it, yes.
Good. It's a good morning so far. What's preventing that from happening now?
Sure. That is an excellent question, and that is one of the first questions. As an attorney in Kansas, I heard this idea and I honestly was like, well, but we have actually found that there are barriers. And so I had to take this to my own personal family experience. As I mentioned, we have 3 aunts. Those aunts are not blood related to me, and they have their own family. One is in Wichita, one is in Emporia, one is in Kansas City. They would be able to step forward and provide, one would be maybe a residence, one maybe would be a custodial person who could help support in a medical consent, for instance. While the other may say, yeah, I can help you with, in my situation, call me if you have any school questions, because I'm a teacher and I can help you navigate in the education system. So right now, our current statute would not permit anyone except for a single individual or a married couple to provide those custodial responsibilities for a child. So this just allows it to more reflect the realities that we all have people. Some are related to us and some aren't. The other piece is that there are folks who, not just those aunts, but those aunts and their children who are the cousins. They could come and stand with the child at the court hearing to appoint the sole custodian, similar to our adoption hearings today, and say, I'm here for this child. I will be here with this youth for the rest of their life. They're my family, as a symbolic situation, even though they wouldn't have those custodial responsibilities. Thank you for your question.
Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rachel, might as well stay there, or for Adina, either one. It seems to me, and I'm just looking this over, the most tenuous part of this is where the judge finds unfitness for the parent, but doesn't terminate the parental rights, where they are still sort of in the lives, but, so it's sort of like they're halfway in between. If you could speak to that part of it, because to me, that seems to be the most, and I don't know, perhaps is that the most frequent situation or not? And, that to me seems to be the most troubling situation.
Sure, and that's an excellent question. I think the first thing I want to point out is that when a child who has not found another family does age out into independent living care, the most common thing they do is they go back to that biological family to start with. So whether the mom is still using drugs or whether the mom is still really not fully capable, that is their mom and they go back. So what SOL would allow is them to keep that relationship, that legal and loving relationship with their parent, while having someone else be the custodian and make those custodial responsibilities. And I just actually was looking at the bill beforehand and reminded myself that even if you are, if you're the sole permanent custodian, you still have that ultimate legal authority rather than a parent who may or may not be fit to parent.
I guess that's what I was asking. I mean, where does the decision-making lie? You never know what kind of a relationship's going to develop as a person becomes an adult, whether they want to have that relationship with the parent or not. But yes. I think that answers my question.
Well, and part of the process is that we should be improving what we're doing with older youth and with their extended family network while they're aging out. So we're having the conversations with the mom and with the potential custodian to say, how are you going to solve this? How are we going to wrap around this youth as they get older together? And ideally, we can prepare them all for that. It's delicate, but it's not. It's worth trying for young people.
And if the parental rights are terminated, then it's much more clear cut. Exactly. You've severed the ties and that's done.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Rachel, for being here. I'm guessing this is going to be for you too, and I too want to echo Senator O'Shea's sentiments. It's so nice to hear the stories, and I applaud what y'all are trying to do. As a former educator, I've seen a lot of instances where there was opportunity for taking advantage. So what are the safeguards in here? Because I go to the thought of, someone taking advantage of a vulnerable young person who's looking for that love, who's looking for that support, and maybe it not being appropriate. So what are the safeguards that would prevent that from happening?
That's an essential question, and I have to go back to there's 3 principles in child welfare. Child safety is the first one. And so we do want to make sure, and this bill does cover, there is something in the federal law called the Adam Walsh Act where anyone cannot be a permanent sole family caregiver if they have a history of certain criminal actions. So there will be those background checks. And additionally, DCF would have to observe and provide a report to the court about the appropriateness of the sole custodian in a similar way that we do with adoptive families today. So we would have the case managers, the CASAs, the guardian ad litems, the district attorneys, all reviewing whether that report was confidence building, and then the judge finally making the decision that it's been a safe place.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, other questions for our conferees? Senator Stefan?
Are you assuming I'm going to ask you?
Well, I'm
going
I
to.
just keep dancing.
That kind of makes me think, that sounds like the most difficult of situations where you have a child still seeking connection to a dysfunctional parent or family system, and you have a positive mentoring person there trying to help, and that child's always getting dipped back into the negativity. Do you have a lot of people signing up on the mentorship side of this, wanting to get involved in that kind of drama?
We have children who develop relationships with people that are unexpected. I believe yesterday an example that I heard was a gym coach. I also was talking about someone who connected with a cook that they used to help prepare lunches with at one of the residential providers that they had been. And I think when you think about those young people who might become in that situation in your life, it's challenging, but I think of my own nephew that's not my biological nephew. It would have been difficult if their parent was struggling with a challenging situation. It would have been difficult, and there's no question I would have stood up to help that young man because he was my family. So I think especially in our churches, our youth ministers, our youth pastors, our teachers, so I think once you have that unique connection, I'm optimistic. But again, this is a pilot. We have to see if it works.
Do we do anything like this anywhere else? Do we have any data on the efficacy of and the wisdom of allowing kids to keep diving into a dysfunctional system while you're trying to bring them into a functional system? Do we have any data on that?
I'm unable to pull research off the top of my head, but I do want to share one. That was the very first thing I was taught. I was an intern at the Children's Advocacy Centers, and I was nervous that my therapy skills weren't very good because I was brand new. And my mentor said to me, 75% of the therapeutic relationship with any young person is just a positive, engaged, warm relationship. So when a child has any one positive individual that they can turn to, that's a positive mentor, it can help them navigate. If we don't have soul, they'll have nobody in that role, and they'll go back to the family without potential other voices and other ways of seeing the world.
Committee, other questions? I have a couple. Thank you, Rachel, for being here. I'm going to start with Alexandria. We'll give Rachel a break. Alexandria, thank you for being here, and I recall you testifying at the Bob Bethel Health Committee. You mentioned your your grandpa. Was this your bio grandfather?
No, this was my foster parents. I don't call them my foster parents because they feel like they did not foster me and me go home. So we call each other they're my adopted parents, but I was never legally adopted. I aged out of the system. So he's my adopted grandpa. But I don't like the word adopted grandpa, but when I have to explain to the public, those are the words we decided on in family we would use. He's my grandpa.
And so, given your circumstances that you consider this your foster family, your adopted family, would you have selected a sole person in your life, or did you already have somebody?
Yeah, so I don't really ever kind of get into my story, but my story's kind of like Soul. So I have this adopted family, right, that really, anytime I got in trouble, anytime that I needed somewhere to stay, the system didn't have somewhere to place me, even when they stopped doing foster care, they were my people. So they were my soul family. And so the reason why I say my grandpa would have been like my soul family if soul was around is because I was always at my grandpa's house. I was always with my grandparents, so anything I wanted to do, I was always there, right? But then I had community relations, and then I had my biological family. So I had my sister, my brother, my aunts and uncles. I was a Reno County kid, so my judge eventually let me reconnect with my mother because that's what I asked. I was like, listen, I want to know where I came from and all the things. So I had those relationships with my biological family. I had the relationships that I formed connections with this family, and then I had the community around me. And I know I think it's on, Rachel may be able to tell you exactly the website. It's either on Children's Alliance, but it has a diagram that shows how SLO family would work. So it has the young person in the middle and then everyone around them. And that's how my family was and still is, right? Being a current foster parent, I have a 13-year-old in my house, and she has that as well. So she has us, and then she has relations with her biological family, and then she has relations in the community, and the community supports me in all the things that she wants to do.
Thank you very much. I'd next like to call Tanya. I know you're in the room. Would you mind coming up to the mic? We received your written-only testimony as Deputy Secretary of DCF. Can you tell us what percentage of the youth, because according to the fiscal note, they were assuming 25% of the young people would establish sole families. Is that what you are seeing as well?
Yes, thank you. Tanya Keys, Deputy Secretary, Department of Children and Families. For the purposes of wanting to know a trajectory of who might experience the program, yes, we do think through some information we have, we really believe that at least the first year, 25% would be interested and would have an opportunity to make this choice.
And are you seeing folks that are coming forward to say, hey, I want to be that sole relationship? Or is that doesn't like foster, I want to foster a child. But this is different, right? These are usually people that are already known to the individual. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I have heard a couple of individual stories personally. I've also heard from KVC and Cornerstones of Care, examples that they've described of young people who are age 16 or older currently who have interest in this, what they know as a concept. But yes, the families are curious about it. They're wanting to know more about it, and they would be interested in being a permanent legal resource for these young persons.
All right, thank you very much. And then I also have a question for Nakaya. Hi, thank you for being here. You mentioned that you could have it been beneficial to you to have kinship care. Would you explain that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, both of my parents were deceased. So that led me to falling through the gaps of the juvenile justice system and landing in the foster care system and then transition as independent living. I did have cousins. I've had cousins that are a little bit older than me. I've had aunts. I've had my brother. And so some of those relationships, obviously, like they looked at like, well, this is not these are your kin, but at the same time, they're young, they're 24, they're not as that, like it was just a whole bunch of criteria that they had to meet, but they didn't meet it, obviously, but I could have greatly benefited from those relationships, right? Like, especially being that I was a youth with no parent, no support really, and yeah.
So that brings the question, would a 24-year-old be in the court system have been given this sole relationship legally over, say, an 18-year-old? And I don't know that you could answer that question, but maybe Rachel can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
I am so sorry. I was organizing my thoughts on a different issue. Would you mind repeating that last part of your question?
No, I will not. I'm teasing Rachel. Would a 24-year-old cousin relative be given a sole, would they be allowed in court to have that sole relationship over an 18-year-old?
Sure, thank you. Just to clarify, you're asking if a person maybe has a 24-year-old older sister, could that sister be eligible to be a sole custodian? I think that's actually an excellent question. Technically, it could be. We don't have that prohibition in this bill. That could also be an adoptive parent today. Practically speaking, it's one of the barriers to the youth who are aging out of care. An older sister doesn't want to be a parent. They want to be an older sister. They want the parental role to maybe be someone who is older, who has a house, who has a place to stay, you know, is more firm, isn't in college, for instance. So it's not technically ruled out, but the issue is important in that we want the sister to be able to maintain her sibling relationship, not be terminated, but she doesn't necessarily want to stand forward and be the custodian.
Thank you. And we had one last question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, and Rachel, it is for you. As I've listened to the conversation, I guess, can you just summarize, because we've touched around it. What does this do that we already don't have in place? Can you just nail it down succinctly for us? Thank you.
Will do my very best. And it is something that has taken time to absorb for me also, so it's a great question. The first piece is that today in our system, when a youth reaches the age of 16, we typically, not necessarily always, but we typically start thinking we've got to get them ready. We've got to make sure they have skills. Do they know how to get a driver's license? Do they know how to do a budget? Do they know how to get their birth certificate? We stop thinking they're still 16. They need family, because we changed the permanency goal to independent living. And what we want is for youth to be able to receive both of those things. We want them to be able to have the relationship with their sibling, their 24-year-old sibling, and a wiser mentor from the community, and those independent living skills. Finally, it ensures that they don't have to stay in to receive the supports after 18. It would allow youth to be more normalized in their school setting, because they could actually leave foster care instead of just wait it out. And the most, sorry.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for your thorough explanation, but we are running late. We have to let the next committee come in. So committee, this closes the hearing on 2536, and committee, we are